The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Autism Live. As you can see, I am here with the fabulous, the wonderful Dr. Temple Grandin. It is April in autism. I want to give just a little disclaimer that we recorded this on April 13th to show it to you guys today, but so excited to be here with you, Dr. Grandin. I know you just got off a plane. You've been traveling a lot.
Yeah, I stayed up late. We was at an autism banquet last night and about 5 hours of sleep. So I slept through most of the flight, but
Oh, well, that's good. Good use of time. I know when you've been traveling a lot, you're hearing a lot, and I know that there's a hot button topic that you particularly want to talk about. Tell us what's going on.
I'm doing a lot of traveling, and one of the things I'm very concerned about that I've been running into in the last year in many different states is you have a 3-year-old child with no speech. I'm not talking about the type where there's no speech delay. These are kids with obvious speech delay, obvious abnormal behavior on 2-year wait lists. Yeah. I'm running into this just too much. This is unacceptable. So what can we do about it? Well, I was at one library and they were wondering what to do about it. And I said, you need to start library play. Let's have retired teachers come in and just start teaching these kids to do turn-taking games, because that's a very, very important part of treatment. We'll call it church play, library play, or something like that, to avoid, we can't call it therapy, but we need to start doing something with these kids, and I think we need to be tapping into retirees. There's one thing I will talk about in the national budget, and I've looked at it very carefully. Half the national budget is for retirees, Social Security and medical. That's half the national budget. And that's true in all the developed countries. Another thing that's happening in a 50-year trend line, because I've been in research now 50 years, in Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, the UK, the US, and Canada, money for research has gone down like this. Us seniors are just taking it up. And what we need to be doing is tapping into this resource as seniors. A lot of them are bored, and get them to come into the library or come into the church and just start working with engaging these little 3-year-olds that are not talking, because we've got to start doing something now. And we're going to have to start doing something now on a local basis. We're going to have to be a lot more local. I just saw a really good program outside of in the Illinois area where they're working with the more severely affected autistics. It's all local. There's been some big donors that put money into it. There's a great program in Texas for the people that require 24/7 care. It's all local, big donors. We're going to have to start doing a lot more of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because when I look at my own field, meat science and cattle, in the 70s, research money flowed like water, like absolute water. That's not true now. Yeah. You know, the research labs that are doing, scientific research in my field, they've cut way back in the last 20 years.
Why do you think that is?
Because Social Security and senior medical is half the federal budget in all of these countries. That's the reason.
Well, and I'm a senior now.
Officially. I am too. I'm a 77-year-old senior. I still work.
Yes.
And so I can't lift up heavy boxes anymore. There's physical things I can't do. But I still work.
Yeah. And one of the questions that was written in was, are you planning on retiring, and what are you planning on doing for your retirement? But even, are you planning on retiring?
No, I'm not planning on retiring. I thought, now if I get where I'm not hardly mobile, I thought I'll be a docent at our local science museum. And I got to make my walker on my wheelchair is the coolest thing. Going to decorate it 1950s bicycle decorations.
I love that. I will come for that. I will come to be given a tour by you as the docent. I
was just at the science museum, for an autism event, a local science museum, and they have, for the real little kids, they have like a water play table Well, let's say an autistic kid was there. Well, what you want to do is get the autistic kid to take turns with a piece of plastic that he's splashing around with, and start teaching that turn taking.
Yeah.
And
Super important.
there's an exhibit there's really cool where you have a big lever and you can actually lift up a piano. That teaches the concept of leverage. But somebody needs to explain to the kids how that works.
Yes.
There's a reason why if you put the rope out on the end of the lever, you can lift the piano. It's on a roller slider thing, and if you roll it in where you make the lever shorter in relation to the fulcrum, you cannot lift the piano.
There we go.
Basic leverage.
I used to love those books, How It Works. I'd never heard of a fulcrum until I looked at one of those books and saw the
This
drawings.
is the kind of thing where let's start getting some of these autistic kids involved in the 4-H and FFA, showing animals. I showed horses as a teenager. Get involved with small engine repair. Start learning mechanical things. We don't put enough value on mechanical skills. And
But to be clear, you're asking for all of the seniors that are out there to step it up
that's right.
and become part of their local community and offer their services, regardless of what they were trained in.
Because I'm running into 3-year-olds and I'm talking about non-verbal 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
That are not deaf.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be autistic or some other developmental problem.
Yeah.
On 2-year wait lists in the last year.
Yeah. I do have a resource that I can share with you. I do have a resource that I can share with you to help some of those families. I don't want it to be a commercial though. So I can tell you about it later. And it's something, if you feel good about, you can be sharing it, but I do have a resource for you.
Okay.
A new company that's trying to meet that need.
But I think we need to be tapping into the resources we have.
I agree.
And a lot of retirees are bored and they actually need stuff to do. I just saw an article just the other day that cruises and golf are not all what it's cracked up to be. Was an article. It was in one of the. I read Wall Street Journal and New York Times. I think it was in one of those. I don't remember which one, but.
Wow. Well, I've got a bunch of questions for you, but before we launch into them, I want to know, because you publish on a regular basis. Not only are you working, but you're publishing. And I know that this year, the 10th anniversary edition of Temple Grandin Did It, I Can Too, came out. Yeah. Wanted to know if you wanted to say anything about that, the 10th anniversary edition.
Well, I just want to encourage kids to work hard, find something they can be good at. I had an autistic person come up to me the other day and said, well, everyone doesn't respect me. I said, the way I got respect is I made myself very good at some things. Early in my career, I made myself a good livestock editor for our state farm magazine. And when I started doing my design work, I was good at my design. And a lot of people thought I was stupid because I couldn't do higher math. But I'll never forget a drawing that I drew in 1978. And I remember looking at this drawing, and I guess I'm not stupid. I drew this. And that was when I did those dipping vat projects that are shown in the movie, in the HBO movie. Those were done in the 70s.
We actually have a question about that design that I'll get to a little bit later on. But I wanted to know, are there any other new books that you want to show or talk to people about that are available?
We've already talked about my visual thinking book.
Yeah, love that book.
And I do have a young readers version, which is basically kind of an abridged edition, and it's got pictures in it. I don't have pictures in the original ones, and the publisher wouldn't let me put pictures in it. But I've got some of my drawings in here. And the thing I learned to do very early in my career was to sell my work rather than myself. I'd show the things, like here's one of my drawings right here.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I would show my work. Now, I do have this Autism in Adolescence. That's pretty new. It's an update. A lot of information in here on non-speaking individuals.
Mm-hmm. Good. We need that.
Yeah, we do need that.
Absolutely. So the question that somebody asked about exactly that drawing that they showed, they wanted to know what your inspiration for that configuration was. They said it's absolutely beautiful, and that it must have been hard to sell that to the men who were in charge at the time because it's beautiful.
Well, there were some curved facilities. So it wasn't, what I did was combine them together in good ways. The other thing is all of the trouble I had, it was mainly being a woman where I had the trouble, was middle management foremans. I didn't show the stuff to them. I showed it to the owners of the ranches, owners of the feed yards, plant manager at a beef plant, plant superintendent, cattle buyer. These are high management people. Those are the people I showed it to. And most of those people actually were decent to me.
Mm-hmm.
The middle management's where I had the problems. So I didn't try to sell it to them. I figured out early on not to do that.
But what was why the curves, and what was the inspiration for you to put it together in the way that you did, which was so novel?
Well, what I did is I went and I handled cattle in every feed yard in Arizona. And there were some curved designs. And I took all the good bits and put them together in the new systems, threw out the bad bits and the mistakes. And the other thing I did that was totally original was to get in the chutes and see what the cattle were seeing. And I am an absolute visual thinker. And so it's obvious to me to get into chutes and see what cattle we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't think in pictures, it wouldn't be obvious to do that.
And what
I found
was
that
it
they
about
were
the
afraid of
curve?
shadows.
Oh, okay.
Things like shadows they were afraid of. I can show you, I've got a picture on my phone here of a shadow that appeared in a great big meat plant. And I call it the spider monster. And this shadow from an overhead structure showed up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That right there. And the cattle absolutely would not walk over that.
Sure.
That was in a new facility. That was recently.
Wow. And so what did they need to do to fix that?
They need to have remove the overhead structure and find a way to brace the gate, which would be difficult, or they'd have to build a roof over it.
Wow. I guess I just didn't realize that it was the shadow thing. Because I remember always looking at it and going, why the curve? I guess I missed that part.
Well, you see that they notice little stuff we don't notice. A string hanging down, a coat on a fence, a truck parked along a fence with a reflection on it, a reflection on water. You see, and the thing about these reflections and these shadows and bright spots is, let's say maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning it's there, 2 hours later it's gone.
Yeah.
And the cattle handling went from bad to good all of a sudden because the spot of sunlight or the shadow was gone.
Wow. And so for the other people that were building the curve that had a partial curve, did they do that also because of shadows, or?
Well, there's two issues here: how we lay a facility out,
Mm-hmm.
and the effect of shadows.
Okay.
And shadows can mess up the best facilities.
I had no idea. Now you got me really
and
thinking.
then what you have to do in some situations is put a roof over the main part of it. Then you can control the lighting.
It's so interesting because honestly, I could walk it and I would not notice the shadows. And now you've got me thinking, how many?
Well, I noticed the shadows. I noticed cattle knows little things that wouldn't be. You know how an electronic sign will sometimes have one pixel or one part of it's discolored?
Yeah.
I instantly see that. Instantly. If there's something wrong with an electronic sign, I see it.
And I'm wondering how many of our kids on the spectrum are seeing things that we as parents aren't seeing, but we could never see, that we just wouldn't pick them up.
Well, I can remember going into the airport one time and United Airlines had a bunch of TV monitors spelling out United, more than once. And one of those monitors was corrupted and had stripes down it. And the minute we walked in the door, I saw that. And I was with somebody when I walked in the door. I said, "Did you see that sign was messed up?" They go, no, didn't see it. But I saw it the instant I walked in.
Yeah.
There was something wrong with the sign. There was one just the other day that just had 1 or 2 pixels in it, so it had some bright spots in it.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be there. I see that instantly.
One of the things now that my son is fully verbal is that he will share things like that with me. But I always think back to when he wasn't verbal, and to all the families, as you were saying before, that have kiddos that aren't verbal, who can't tell people, I'm seeing that shadow and it looks like a spider, so I don't want to go in there, so I'm going to bite somebody.
The other thing that I'm running into with non-speaking older children and adults is hidden painful medical issues
Oh, yeah.
that are not getting fixed. Bad urinary tract infections, ear infections, toothaches, heartburn, constipation. And I always tell parents, if you have someone who's non-speaking and their behavior's all of a sudden deteriorated, the first thing you've got to check out is, do they have a urinary tract infection? You can test for that.
Yeah.
Do they have an ear infection? Look in the ear.
Yeah.
And when I bring this up at conferences, I'll have people come up with a couple of horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
Advanced urinary tract infection that had gone into the kidneys.
Oh,
No wonder the behavior was bad.
breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. Okay, I'm going to launch into some of these questions here. There is a movement that is taking hold in the adult autistic community to truly look at the quality of life for the adult autistic. It is hard to define because it is and should be unique for each person, but can you talk about what defines quality of life for you?
Well, having an interesting job, is one of the things of quality, like having an interesting career. And the other thing is, when a parent says to me they tried something I suggested and it made a difference, like one thing I suggest right now on noise sensitivity, let's say with hair dryers, for example, is give the child the hair dryer or the vacuum cleaner and let them turn it on and off where they control it.
Yeah.
And it might go to a favorite plaything when they control it.
Yeah.
That's something. And I just had a scientist just contact me, and he's doing some work on that, going to do a study on this of having the person control the thing. And if the person controls it, also, there's a very interesting book out now by Bill Gates. It's called Source Code. And his upbringing was very similar to mine. There were two things we had to do as kids: sell candy for charity. That taught you how to talk to people. And we had to be host and hostesses at parents' parties. When the guests came, we had to greet them. He had to do this. I had to do this. This is a generational thing. And I really recommend this party host and hostess. We need to start doing that to teach social skills. And then you got to go around to the guests and serve the snacks. And you take their coats. And that's one of the things that helped me to have the guts to go up to the editor of the magazine that's showing the movie and get the card. All the candy I had sold. And he did the same thing. The other thing I got to thinking after looking at Bill Gates' book was he said I had just the right amount of pressure with supports. And mother had high expectations with accommodations. So I just got thinking of an example. When I was 5, we had to go on a ferry boat to get to where we went vacationed. One of the ones that you drive on your cars on it.
Yeah.
And it had a very loud horn. And I remember flinging myself on the deck and screaming.
Oh.
So they let me ride in the cabin below. We're going to go on this ferry.
Yeah.
But you can ride in the cabin below. That was the accommodation. Because I'm hearing too much of oppositional defiant, where the kid would probably jump out of the car as he approached the ferry.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no way I would have done that. We're going to go on that ferry.
Right.
But an accommodation was made. And I'm hearing too much stuff where mother would give choices. Her other family had a family trip ruined because their boy wouldn't put phone in the x-ray machine. Wrecked a family trip. Well, let's say those had been around in the 50s. I'll tell you how mother would have handled that. Here's your choices.
Yeah.
You can leave it at home. You can put it in your backpack and put an x-ray, or you can put it in the dog dish. It's going in the x-ray machine, or it's staying home.
Yeah.
Those are the choices.
Yeah. I love that, because I think it's hard for a parent. Sometimes we go too easy on our kids and go, okay, they're upset, I'm not going to force them to do it, right? Instead of giving them those reasonable choices.
Giving them choices. The phone can be left at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you want to do the whole summer vacation without your phone? I don't think so. Maybe a weekend without it. But no, if the phone goes to the airport, it goes in the x-ray machine, period.
It has to. It has to.
Not negotiable.
Absolutely.
Or it stays home. And you can choose what you put it in. I put it in my bag. I don't want somebody to steal it.
There you go.
So I put it inside my bag.
I like it in the dog dish because then I can keep an eye on it. Isn't
Yeah,
that
no,
funny how we look at
I
different?
put it in my bag, and those are dog dishes. And the way that I know that they're dog dishes is when they bought some new ones, they hadn't taken the labels off yet.
You have the best insider
They
information.
are dog dishes,
That's so funny because they look like dog dishes.
and they are
Uh,
dog dishes.
there we go.
And you
That's
see
why.
now, as a visual thinker, when I talk about those dog dishes, I see them. They're white with kind of a rubber bottom, so when the
Yes,
dog eats, they don't slide around on the floor. You see,
exactly.
I see them when I talk about them.
And I do too, but not to the extent that you do. This is what I've learned over the years. I also am a visual thinker, but not in the hyper intense way that you are.
Well, you see, it's
Um,
specific. Like when I pick up the dog, one of those dog dishes, it always has a rubber, the whole bottom edge is rubber. That's
yeah,
so when the dog eats, it doesn't slide.
yeah,
Um, you see,
yes.
some people will visualize something like if I say, think about a church steeple or think about a cell phone tower,
Mhm.
the image they get is very vague.
Yeah,
When you say cell phone tower, I'm saying we got a really great fake tree. Okay, that is a particular cell phone tower, and I see it.
yeah,
And when I drive to school, I go by it and I look at it, and I really did a pretty good job on it.
that's good. I've seen some that look ragged,
Although
but
some of them
don't.
these look stupid, they don't put enough branches on them.
Yeah,
You got to
exactly.
put a lot of branches on them, otherwise they look really fake.
I know. I've got a question. I have an 8-year-old son who benefited from a lot of quality intervention. We all feel that it is time for him to spend as much time in the social world now. He's smart, he's funny, but he is sometimes a little awkward with kids his age. My question for you: he loves robots. I can put him in a camp this summer that is just for coding robots, or I can put him in a camp that is teaching kids theater and performing skills. I feel like he would love the robots, but the theater might be good for him. What would you recommend?
Well, but they're probably doing other things there along with the coding robots because you have to learn to get along with other kids. Also, in robots, there's two parts of them. There's the visual part, making the mechanical part of the robot, and then there's the coding. And you may be dividing the people up. I mean, it depends upon how the robot camp is done,
Okay.
and also the if he's real, is he a see? I asked now, is he a math kid?
And that I don't
If
know.
he was a math kid, I think I would be pushing the robots. Another thing, we're not doing a very good job of developing our math kids.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing the horror stories of third and fourth grader bored with baby math, behaving badly at school, hacking into the school's computer system when they should be moved ahead in math,
Yeah.
and they're bored stiff.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around behavior that those are labeled the trouble kids, but they're actually the kids that are, as you said, are bored.
Well, and
Um,
then you've got the visual thinkers. I sat next to a veteran a month ago on a plane, and we got to talking about how you think. And we both had failed algebra. And she went in the Army and took the Army's mechanical aptitude test and aced it. They said, we basically have one job for you. You're fixing the great big cargo jets. That is your job.
nice.
You
Nice.
see, but they place a value on mechanical aptitude,
Yeah.
and it is an aptitude.
Well, we don't have shop anymore in the high
Well,
school.
that's just it. And the thing is, we need to be having a shop in young things. So let's go back to our retirees.
Yes.
4-H, for example, has a small engine repair program that you can do with real young kids fixing lawnmowers.
Be
And if you're worried
great.
about safety, take the blades off
Yeah.
because what we want to be doing is fixing the engine
Yeah.
and start working with kids with some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
That's there's a lot of retirees that might be really good at that and get a kid interested in these things. And broken lawnmowers, they get the right price. They're free.
We need to start a movement.
Well, this is where we've got to, um, um, starting with the little kids with turn-taking games, church play, library play.
Mhm.
You got to start doing something with these kids. You can't just let
Absolutely.
them vegetate out on phones.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely not.
Which brings me to what do you recommend for teens that are starting college in the fall? My daughter reminds me so much of you. She's so smart. She's going to college in the fall, just an hour away. I would love to know what you did to prepare to live in the dorms and live with strangers.
Well, and I went to a boarding school in high school, so that helped with that. But one big problem I'm seeing is I'm seeing kids graduate from college and they've had no work experience.
Yeah.
And what Drexel's University is doing in their autism program is they're making it 5 years, and they're working every summer, and they're learning how to work while they're there. We've got to have a lot more emphasis on working skills too.
Which is so important. I have to tell you that last summer, my son has been working for years and has multiple different job experiences. But last year he was going to apply for a new job, and he was trying to apply for jobs online, and it was such a nightmare.
Let's just forget that.
Yeah,
Half of all good jobs are backdoor. Use it. You never know.
Backdoor. Yeah.
Connection.
Yep.
Connections. You know somebody, you can just short circuit all that online crap.
Yeah, because it was, and I had
just forget it.
Yeah.
And because half of all good jobs, even now, are backdoor.
Backdoor. All right, I'm going to tattoo that on my forehead. Somebody wants to know what your favorite meal is to eat.
Oh, I don't know. I remember having some chocolate stuff with raspberries on it. That was really good. Those are one of my favorite desserts.
But like, if it's your choice, what's the thing that you want to eat every week? What's your favorite like dinner?
Oh, just the other day we went out to the Longhorn Steakhouse. I had some steak, and then the side I really love is sweet potato.
Oh,
That's the best side. And I like to put butter. I don't like to put marshmallows and all that gunk on it.
Okay.
I just like to put the cinnamon butter on it.
Ooh, cinnamon butter.
Side. Really
a little
good.
Bit of salt and pepper, no? Or yes?
Not on sweet potatoes.
Not
on the steak, yes.
Okay. All right.
I don't put salt and pepper on sweet potatoes.
And then anything else with that? A coleslaw, a salad, anything? No.
Yeah, but I like that. I unfortunately now I'm gluten free, and one of the things that's really annoying me now is people are putting wheat in cornbread. I wish they would stop doing that.
Oh, I have a great mix that I buy that's a gluten-free cornbread mix.
Well, cornbread, if it's real cornbread, is gluten-free.
Right.
I find I can eat the cornbread that Cracker Barrel has. Because they're probably not putting wheat in it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, I went to a banquet last night. Well, I shouldn't have eaten 3 of them. I think they put a little wheat in it.
Okay. And then, so if you, tell me if this is too personal, how recently did you go gluten-free?
It's been just about a year now. And I looked up a thing I just put in seniors and gluten intolerance.
Yeah.
Found some stuff online about that. I was about a year ago, I started getting horrible heartburn.
Oof.
Really bad heartburn. And the doctor said, you got to get that under control. You can get esophageal cancer from that.
Yeah.
And then I read this thing about seniors and gluten, and I just have gone gluten-free. Now, I don't worry about the muffin touched something. I'm not worrying about that. I had some quiche tonight. I just didn't eat the crust.
There you go.
Okay. But I'm finding that if I cheat really badly, 2 hours later, I pay for it.
Yeah.
With a heartburn.
We found a couple of.
I'm not some kind of food faddist, but I've got to get the heartburn under control.
I appreciate that. Somebody said, my son was just diagnosed. I watched your movie and it gave me such hope. Thank you. My son is 4 and nonverbal. What, in your opinion, is helpful in getting him to talk? And did you ever have trouble talking?
Well, my speech came in gradually, a few stressed words at a time. Now, there's 3 basic ways the brain can be messed up with speech. Now, when the grown-ups talked really fast, it went to gibberish. So slow down when you talk to the kids. The other thing is give the kid time to respond. They're like a slow computer. They take time to respond. So I had some auditory processing problems where if the speech was too fast, I simply didn't. It went blah, 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 like that.
Yeah.
And then I had some expressive problems getting it out. It's like a stutter. Then you have your echolalic kid, where they'll memorize a movie script, but they don't know what it means. They'll be yakking out this movie. And why a movie? Because they can play it over and over again, and it always says the same thing. And back in the days when you just had old-fashioned TV, it was commercials they learned, because those were things that played over and over again. And what you have to do, that there's a really nice, clear speech. They have to learn that words have meaning. And there's a book called Life Animated, and what was done in that was to take scenes out of a Disney movie and work it into the real world. Use a phrase in the movie in a real world situation. That's for the echolalic kid, which I was not.
Yeah.
And
great documentary about that book as well.
yeah,
Oscar
yeah.
nominated. Yeah.
No, but this
Yeah.
is something that you see, something people can actually do. I had trouble getting my words out. If people spoke slowly, I could understand. But I think some people remain non-speaking. They're just hearing oi 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 oi, and they're not hearing the auditory detail. Like if I said cat, they might hear ah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially young women, who became verbal later after puberty that report that it was gibberish, that they couldn't
Yeah,
pick
that's
out the
right. You
sounds.
see, I thought grown-ups, when I was maybe 3 or 4, I thought grown-ups had their own language, and I called it grown-up talk.
Hmm.
And I remember one time my sister and I we sat outside. We were going to imitate some grown-up talk, and I'm going oi 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 oi.
That's exactly the noise that my son made. That is exactly the noise that he would play with his dolls and make that noise as if they were talking to each other, which is very interesting to
Well,
me.
but you see, but that was what I heard when the grown-ups talked fast.
I guess that's what he heard too.
Yeah,
I
you
just
see,
dropped.
there's an auditory slowness, and if you take, let's say, you put speech through a sound analyzer, your consonants like cat, hat, those consonants are fewer milliseconds than the vowels.
Yeah. Well, plus in English language, spoken language, we have all these diphthongs and triphthongs that are very confusing. It's a very difficult language to learn for people that are learning it as a second or third or fifth language.
Yeah.
It's a hard language to learn. Somebody wants to know what you think about using VR technology to teach autistic teenagers and adults job skills.
I'd like to just go on a real job.
Okay,
I let's get out on a real job. They're going to go
love
in
it.
a store and buy something, and we need to be doing a lot more. Okay, let's say we're doing a library play or something like that. Well, like our science museum has like kind of a field with grass and stuff out back where kids can go, and we did a study at a horse center. Katie Peters did a study, and she had horse therapy. But then she had another treatment, which was going for a walk in a beautiful park-like garden that the university owns and waitlist control. Now, the horses were by far the best treatment, but the park-like garden did have some efficacy.
Okay.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
It was sort of
Better than
halfway between
nothing.
it was halfway between the horses and waitlist control.
Okay. Better than nothing. Dr. Grandin, do you have any autistic students in your program? Do you do anything different for them than your other students? And do you have any advice for teachers?
Well, one thing you've got to be very concrete with them. I've had several autistic students, and one of them, they got a great job afterwards. And then COVID messed it all up for them.
Oh, no. Timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's terrible.
and I have another guy who's trying to get a job at a zoo. Um, I always try to, have plenty of time to talk to them, encourage them.
Yeah, amazing.
But the thing I really want to emphasize is, learning the working skills. Kids are not learning it, and they're not learning things like money. And I had an allowance of 50 cents a week when I was a little kid. And certain items were allowance items like comic books, candy, little paper kites. Well, they didn't buy those things.
Yeah.
Well, 50 cents, I could get 5 Superman comics. But if I wanted a 69-cent airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was 8 and 9 years old when I was learning that.
It's amazing.
But you see, that's real money. And let's say you have a debit card. And I think we need to work on making it more real, like printing out the statement.
Yeah.
And then you buy something, and then you print out the statement, and you see where the money was taken out. Now, right now, I was just paying some bills. I still use paper paper records and everything.
Mhm.
And I like them because it makes the money real. I write a check, I get a check. Um, we're going to have to wait to make, let's say if I have to go electronic, I would be printing out the statements and marking them up, and I've got to make it more real so it's not abstract.
Absolutely. That's Susie Orman gives that advice too, for everyone to make the money real. My grandson was just diagnosed, and I want to get a book for my son and daughter-in-law.
How old is the grandson?
They don't say.
Well, this is the thing. I'm figuring, is it because I want to know, is it like an early intervention kid or the elementary school?
They don't say, but they want to
Well,
know
that's
which one of your books would you recommend for the son and the daughter-in-law?
all right. Let's say it's a
The
little
parents. Okay.
All right, let's just say it's a 3-year-old. Now, I have a little small book called Autism and Education, and I recommend that teachers and psychologists give that to parents so they won't be freaked out by a gigantic big book. And it has a lot of stuff in a small book. Now, the way I see it, it's probably my most comprehensive autism book. That's a good one for parent of a 3-year-old. Now, you get the older kids. I'm going to be recommending the Autistic Brain, visual thinking. And the other big thing is we need to be doing chores when they're young. I want to do the party host and hostess. I want to really push that. The lowest income families can do that, and selling candy for charity. These are things that anybody can do. And then paper route substitutes, like 11-year-olds, they need to walk the neighbor's dog where they're working for somebody outside the family. It's a church volunteer job, and they're working for the pastor.
Yeah.
You see, and it's on a schedule, and outside the family is the boss.
I
Now,
had
that
to go
needs to be
next
around
door and
11.
yeah, my job when I was when I was 11, I had to go next door and polish silver for the lady next door. And
Okay.
I got paid 50 cents an hour. And she got something out of it, I got something out of it.
Well,
So,
those things are easy to set up,
yeah, absolutely.
and we need to be doing that.
Absolutely. I've heard Dr. Grandin say that she does a burst of activity to regulate herself. Can she describe that?
Well, I do right now, do 120 old lady push-ups every night. Just the front half comes up, and then I lay on the floor and I swim. And
Okay.
when I first started doing that, I could barely get my legs off the floor. And I do that every night. It takes about 5 minutes. It's a burst of hard exercise. And
Okay.
that seems to help better than just walking. Another thing I'm doing in the airport now to help my back, I've become a connoisseur of the airport ceiling. Now I still can see the floor in front of me, or a hotel corridor, big long, and I make sure I can see the ceiling, and I make myself walk really fast. And looking up the ceiling, it forces me to stand up. I've
Got it.
discovered the pigeon that can fly an entire concourse at the Newark airport. We've got birds chirping at the O'Hara airport at 6:30 in the morning.
Wow. Well,
I'm now hearing them. It was like half light. The airport has a glass ceiling.
yeah, amazing. My mother used to describe, and I'm starting to feel it too, that she would say, stand up and she'd say, I have to iron myself out so that I can get straight. Is that kind of what you're feeling like
Well,
too?
yeah, but by making myself, now I can still see the floor.
Right.
And
That's
but
important.
no, I can still see the floor. And I don't do this with the, but when I'm outside, I'll look at the tops of the light poles, the tops of the trees.
But how fun,
And
you're seeing different things.
and it makes it's helped my back a lot.
Love that.
Made a big difference.
Dr. Grandin, are you a big reader? Do you like to read? And what is your favorite nonfiction book?
Oh, I like to read a lot of factual scientific stuff. Like my idea of the great breakfast reading is a science or a nature. I was just looking the other day. Now, which one am I going to have for breakfast tomorrow?
I love that. One of the first times I got to interview you, you had just read it was a business magazine, and they were talking about somebody had done a funny article where they were pairing wines with
With
cat
dog
food,
food.
dog food. That's what it was. And we giggled about that for about a half an hour because it was
That's the kind of stuff I think is funny. This is
so
Business Week.
So you don't have a favorite nonfiction book?
Um, let's just think. Nonfiction book. Let me think.
It's okay to
I
not.
tend to read a lot of magazines,
Okay.
newspapers.
Well, let's leave it at that. Does
Yeah.
Temple remember feeling, quote, different as a child? I would love to hear her talk about what she remembers thinking or feeling.
Well, one thing that was good when I was in elementary school, I had small classes, so every kid was invited to everybody's birthday party. I didn't have the awful thing of not being invited. There was
Yeah.
only 13 kids in the class, and all the moms got together and kind of said, everybody's going to invite everybody to their birthday party.
Yeah. I don't know when we
Now,
lost that.
now, when I was a teenager, I didn't fit in at all. And younger kids were interested in projects and stuff like that. But when I went away to the boarding school, they put me to work cleaning horse stalls and running the horse barn. And I learned how to work. And I did have some friends where we rode horses together, friends who shared interests. Model
Yeah.
rocket club and riding horses.
There you go. There
I'm
you
a
go.
big fan of working on friends who shared interests.
I love that. Um, okay, we already asked that one about the design. We're having a hard time explaining death to our 14-year-old who is on the spectrum. His grandmother recently passed, and even though we explained it to him, he keeps asking when he can see her. Maybe we didn't do a good job explaining what does
Well, I
Dr.
kind of asked,
Grandin recommend?
like, I had this question. Well, one of the things is, how was the method of death? In one case, the person had a heart attack and then the medics couldn't revive him. And I said, I think the best thing to tell them is an older person, like an older car. Sometimes people just break, and the doctors weren't able to fix him.
Yeah.
And we have his fishing poles, and he loved fishing. And we can use those fishing poles, and we can remember him and all the good times they have at fishing. But older persons sometimes just break. You see, because it wasn't a long chronic illness. One of my friends had a father-in-law that probably had an aneurysm when he was wheeling a dolly with a case of his favorite wine on it, and they found him 4 hours later, stone dead.
Mm.
And I told her he probably had no pain, just fainted.
Yeah.
Well, that was his favorite wine. Let's
Yeah.
save that for very special occasions and remember them. And it didn't
Right.
break my bell. But I just see, then you have something where it's a long illness. But the thing is, he's gone.
Yeah.
And so with the one, and it worked with the heart attack thing. And the kid had saw the medics trying to fix him. I said, well, the medics just couldn't fix him.
Yeah.
He was too broken.
Yeah. But for
And
the
a heart
longer
attack is
illness, what do you recommend?
basically just breaks.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can't fix you. Then you have other things, chronic diseases, but this wasn't. And she liked the idea of we remember him by using the fishing rods, and we'll really take good care of these fishing rods. They were his favorite things.
I love that.
And that resonated with the kid.
Yeah.
But he's gone. He broke.
Yeah.
Now, then he might get worried. He might break. I said, well, young people don't break anywhere near as easily as the old ones do.
That's a good way of putting it.
It's
Another
like an
question.
old car. It's like an old car.
Yeah.
An old person,
Uh,
like an old car. And that worked.
yeah. I'm really
And
interested
kind of
in
was
your
matter
take
of
on this.
fact about it.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's important too. Somebody wrote in and said, I recently attended the Profound Autism Conference, which I think was just this last week, and was surprised when I posted something about it on Facebook that several adult autistics really took exception to the term profound autism, saying it's offensive and inappropriate. I am really struggling with this. I don't want to be offensive to anyone. I just want to help my son who is very impacted. I find when I tell people my son is autistic, they are picturing someone who could formulate an argument to a Facebook post. But my son is nonverbal and does not have the skills to do that. What do you think about the term profound
I
autism?
don't know. The other thing, I've heard a term used 24/7 care.
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that's something they have to have.
So
And some
just
people have called them I went to a very nice place called Benjamin's Hope and another one called Brookwood in Texas.
Mhm.
And all the clients there require 24/7 care. But some of them are able to work in the greenhouse and work with poinsettias, make little statues to sell in the gift shop.
Yeah.
But they have to have 24/7 care.
So in the future, she could describe her child as being autistic with that as an autistic person who needs 24/7 care.
Well, yeah, you could. I don't know, but the problem is that this is the problem we got with autism. You're going from somebody running a tech company
Right.
to somebody that can't put their clothes on. I talked to a mom last night, an adult that's not potty trained.
Yeah.
You see, this is the problem. You've got such a wide range.
Yes. And I know it's hard for those parents because they're just looking for a way that they can identify so that people understand what they're talking about. But I love that 24/7 care.
Well, that's what, and that describes it. You can't leave them alone. Somebody's
Right.
got to be with them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But even though well, I have a friend that has a non-speaking son, and well, she takes him on outings to stores so he can buy DVDs.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
he can't be left alone.
Right. Right. Um, I, I feel like when I talk to the adults that take exception to the profound autism, that they feel that it's going to put them into a category where people think of them as not people. And like you just said, this person is non-speaking, but they still like going to the video game store. They still like going to the library. They still are people with a life. And but you're right, they need 24/7 care because they can't be left alone. I
Well, and
love that.
see, this is the problem. And some of them can't dress themselves. They can't do any if they're bathing, Then you have others where they can do those basic skills, but
Yeah,
they could never live independently.
right.
And
They want to know.
then you see the smart kids where they're getting babied and they're not learning any skills.
Right.
You
Well,
see, I
that's the
kind
other
of see,
side.
see the way my mind works, I see specific examples of sort of these different levels.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things that drives me crazy is when I just see so much potential in so many of these individuals. And I think that I don't fault the parents, but I think they haven't gotten good information and they feel like, it's just game over. And and it isn't. There are things that you can do and you should do.
Well, this is the thing in the early intervention, like the book Autism in Education. It's a little tiny, skinny gray book.
Yeah.
And I've packed it full of information. But
Yeah.
let's say you have a 3-year-old newly diagnosed, mom's freaking out. It's a really good book because it doesn't overwhelm her with a big encyclopedia-sized
Right.
book. And 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 it has a lot of information. Because the thing we know about early intervention is that it improves the prognosis.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
in fact, we got so many kids on the non-speaking, not deaf,
it's heartbreaking.
with autistic behaviors, undiagnosed, no therapy. We've got to start working with them. Church play, library play. Let's get the retirees to work with the
seniors moving.
Working with these little kids on little turn-taking games. That was a very important part of my therapy, was how to learn and take turns at games. And it's a really good teacher. Okay, let's say the kid's twiddling a coin. Well, we're going to take turns twiddling the coin.
Yeah.
I
like that. They want to know where you like to go for vacation. They say, does she like theme parks? Has she ever been to Disneyland or Universal?
Oh, I've been to Disneyland, but I got 2 construction site trips lined up. Those are vacations. I'm going to get to go to a really big construction site.
I got to take you to the airport one time, and as we pulled into it was the Dallas airport, there was construction everywhere, and it was just so much fun to watch how you reacted to that. It was like we had taken you to Disneyland. So it was wonderful.
Well,
but you don't
airport. I was at the Newark airport, and actually those old buildings are really good reinforced concrete. And when they remodeled one of the terminals, They didn't tear that up. That building was too good. They put all new computer tables in there, new furniture, a nice new restaurants, and just kept the building.
I love that.
You know, that was the right way to remodel it. Now, if the building's a piece of junk, then you're better off tearing it down. This building is not a piece of junk. It's actually beautiful, really heavy concrete work.
Is that the one where the bird?
Looking at it really closely, and then I looked how to remodel it. They just all new furniture, computer tables, and nice new restaurants.
And is that the one where you saw the bird flying through the terminal?
It was a different terminal. It had the bird. He went right down the center of the terminal. A pigeon,
I love that.
full speed pigeon.
I love that. So many autistics seem to be drawn to water, often to their peril. I would love to hear if
that's bad.
I would love to hear if Temple ever felt this way and if she has any words of wisdom on this.
Well, I was taught to swim at a very early age.
Okay.
And so if I went in the water, I would have just been swimming.
Okay. Somebody else said there are not enough studies about autism and aging. I'm curious if Temple is having trouble with the healthcare system as she ages. Are they listening to her and being responsive?
Well, I've got back pain now. I've got a rotator cuff I managed to rip on the airport shuttle door of all that dumb things, because those are the kind of places I'm not careful. When I'm in a meat plant, I'm careful. Getting off the airport shuttle, I just somehow held onto this handle. It somehow caught my elbow, stepped down the step, that rammed my arm back. Really hard.
Will that now make you more careful on those things? Or
no? I'm very careful. Let me tell you, I'm very careful now. When I get off that shuttle now, very careful.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. They want to know if you like to wear headphones.
No, I prefer not to. But let's talk about wearing headphones to block noise. If you wear them all the time, it will make it worse. It'll make you more sensitive. But let the kid have control. Have them with you. And then if the fire alarm goes off, you have to go in these awful restrooms with all the automated stuff. You can put it on for that and then take it off when you come out. Having control is important.
Okay.
Like wear headphones all. I've heard horror stories of kids getting so sensitive to hearing. They couldn't do normal, quiet home conversation.
Yeah. Another question. My 5-year-old really likes to cook, but he's wild with the knife. He gets all excited and all the rules we have taught him go right out the window. What do you suggest?
Well, okay, now when he gets all excited, first of all, I don't really want to get excited around the stove.
Yeah.
I need a little more information on what he's doing. So if he was mixing something, is he splashing it all out?
Well, they say it's with the knife, that when he's using the knife, he gets all wild with it. He gets very excited by the knife.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
No, I think what I would say would be done with me, knives are grown-up things. And you have to have grown-up behavior or you cannot use them.
Okay.
And grown-ups don't wave knives around.
Yeah.
You watch how mom uses a knife to cut the apple or whatever you're cutting.
There we go.
They're grown-up things. I remember when my aunt let me use some of her professional oil paints. I was maybe 7. I was very careful with them. Those were grown-up paints. Those weren't the little children's watercolors. I had to have grown-up behavior to handle those. Now, I want to know like that if you're going to use a knife, you have to have grown-up behavior. Grown-ups don't wave knives around.
That's right. They want to know what your favorite toy was as a child growing up.
Well, I used to make parachutes out of silk scarves. And then I made all kinds of crossbar things out of coat hangers to spread the strings apart so they'd open up more quickly. I loved playing with those kinds of things. I loved kites, stuff that flew. Those were my favorite things when I was a child.
Somebody else wants to know what makes Temple really happy. I think we saw your face when you said the construction site.
Oh, yeah, I am looking forward to this trip. And I'm not letting any other trip mess it up. I've got a trip that I got to go to a small airport in New York, and I want to be out of there that night. So if we have a thunderstorm, I can still make that trip. It's in the summer.
I love that. I love that for you. Does Temple
I don't want my construction trips messed up. Those are my fun trips.
That's good. Does Temple like holidays or does she find them disruptive?
Well, there's certain things I like. I mean, I've been to Disneyland and I really liked that. But since I've got Meniere's disease in remission right now, I'm a little afraid to go on the rides. I'm afraid it'll screw up my ear. Uh,
Yeah.
that's now I can tell you one ride I will never go on again. I hated it. It was Space Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely hated it. And it was like an old 70s ride, the Wild Mouse in the dark. And I thought it was just awful. Oh, anyway, I'm going on that again.
I'm not good on the rides. I get car sick on the tram coming into Disneyland.
Oh no, I
But
don't have any problem with a tram. I go on they have a tram like that at the airports. Have got those trams.
yeah, I
Go
know.
on
I
them
don't
all
do
the
them.
time, and you better believe it. I hold on to the poles.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. And you hold
I
on
don't
to
want
your
to fall.
glasses and your hat and your everything. My husband works at Universal Studios. He's one of the actors in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, but he's getting
Oh,
ready to retire. But if you come to Los Angeles soon, let me know
what's
if
he
you're
gonna
all.
do when he retires?
Well, I don't know, Temple. He's a voiceover actor, but most of the voiceover acting is going to AI now.
That's going to
So,
AI. And the other thing, corporate offices are just getting cleaned out.
yeah.
You see, for the visual thinkers like me, the really, like this veteran that I talked to, I put her to work fixing the airplanes.
Mhm.
Mechanical jobs aren't going to go away. So for my kind of thinker, and I'm a mathematician, I want to really push the trades because we'll be laughing all the way to the bank when everybody
Yeah.
else gets laid off. Animation's going to go to AI, video
Yeah.
game design will go to AI, but fixing things, I'm fixing elevators, I'm finding broken elevators everywhere I go
Yeah.
because nobody is fixing them.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to get my husband when he retires to go do some acting voiceover stuff with kiddos.
Well, then
Or
let's do some acting stuff with kids.
yeah.
Theater's a great thing to do with kids. Mother did a lot of stuff with the neighborhood kids. We had a little school fair, and she did the Wizard of Oz. And since she worked in some professional theater, she brought professional lighting stuff in. That was just really cool. Kids
Love it.
just loved it. And this is with elementary school kids. And then the parents were dressing up as Ferdinand the Bull, and people thought that was so funny to see
I
the
love that.
the dads dressed up as bulls. And that was some of and they, what the horns were? They were plastic horns that were instruments, and those were the horns.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah,
How
and
funny is that?
and the kids just thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
Getting the dads and the moms in the neighborhood going to these plays,
I
and
love it.
but and these things weren't that, again, they weren't that very expensive to do. It was just done in the
Yeah.
school auditorium.
Yeah. Well, you made me think when you were talking about being a host that there's one couple that I know that they have a blended family and there's a couple of kiddos on the spectrum. And every year for their anniversary, they have the kids pretend that it's a restaurant because, they have a lot of kids and, there's not really a lot of money to go to fancy restaurants. So the kids all dress up and play different roles. Somebody's the waiter, somebody's the cook, somebody's the maitre d, and they have them all play those roles. They
They
usually
serve
post
the
a video.
food.
Yep, they serve the food, they do everything. They clean all the dishes and they present a bill and somebody like takes fake money at the fake cash register. And they usually videotape it and post it. It's the cutest thing, but
No, but
it's
these are the kinds of things that aren't hard to do, and they're not
yeah,
expensive. The
yeah,
plays that mother
exactly.
put on in the school were not expensive, and getting the dads, there were
Dress up.
plastic horns from Woolworths.
I love that. I
They were
love that.
not. That's what we used to call the five and dime store.
Yes, yes. I remember those days.
But
Well,
those things weren't expensive. There's all kinds of stuff. What one mom did is she went to the lumberyard and had 2x4s cut up into blocks, and then she had the kids sand them and paint them Minecraft in the driveway. And her autistic kid was the head of the neighborhood. How about collecting all the Amazon boxes?
oh
And we
yeah.
tape those up and we paint them. We could have giant Minecraft.
That's very cool.
But those are things that you could just do.
Yeah.
The boxes are free.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Everybody has
that's a
tons of
great
them.
idea. Yes,
I
don't
mean,
be
that's
jealous.
just And then you're also going to discover that Amazon has a sizing system for the boxes. They have numbers on them.
Oh,
And
I
you
didn't
get
know.
enough of those, you'll start to figure that out. And that'll
Okay.
help you in building things.
I'm going to go look at an Amazon box in a minute.
You know, they
We've
have
taken
numbers.
we've taken the amount of time that we asked you, so I don't want to keep you, but is there any last thought that you
Well,
want to
I
share?
want to, you know, we got it. We got to start. I'm very, very concerned about this wait list stuff.
Yeah.
And we need to enlist retired teachers to start, you know, playing games with these little kids, you know, church play, library play, maybe community center play.
Yeah.
And we've got to start doing something with that. And then also working with, you know, it's doing craft projects with kids and 4-H projects. I mean, I worked with people in welding that had a single welding class in a Future Farmers of America course. We've got to be getting the hands-on classes back in the elementary schools.
Yeah.
And that's something a retiree can come in and do an art class.
Absolutely.
You know, this is
Absolutely.
where, and I'm a 77-year-old senior. Well, there's some people retiring as early as 55,
Yeah.
but okay, I am now 13 years older than somebody at, I know 13 years of 10, 12 years older than somebody retiring at 65.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're not going to retire.
Well, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wouldn't know what to do with myself. I'd be bored.
Well, I remember the first time I met you and I asked you that question and you said teaching is what I do for myself as a woman. That's that you
Well, and then
loved teaching
teaching, I
that
think, is really
response.
important and doesn't get enough credit.
Absolutely.
And I have to owe a lot of my success to some excellent teachers, starting with my speech teacher. I think I know my speech teacher. It was two older women in the basement of a little housing development house. That's where they had the speech therapy school. And then mother taught me to read at age 8 with phonics.
Yeah.
And when reading out loud. And then Mrs. Deach, my third grade teacher, really good. She and mother and her worked together. I had a great science teacher in high school and
Yeah.
at the ranch. Another really important mentor. It was Jim the contractor who helped me get my business started. And some of the owners of the feed yards and places were very good. Norb, the superintendent of the Swift plant. I have to thank all these people that mentored me.
Well, I'm sure that they're so impressed with what all that you have done and how you've changed the world. You've changed how people think about autism. You've changed how people perceive autism and to have been a part of that must be a
Well,
great
I'm
pleasure for
explaining to
them.
business people we need the skills. I said, all right, you know, like I read these fancy magazines where, you know, they got, you know, $1 jillion watches in them, things
Yeah.
like that, all this fancy stuff, fancy apartment buildings, big silver towers.
Yeah.
If the water system doesn't work, I don't think you'd want to live in that building.
No kidding.
And you're going to need us non-mathematician, mechanical people to keep it going.
Amen to that.
Okay.
Well, I've so enjoyed this. You are absolutely amazing. We're going to sign off here, and we hope that you guys enjoyed. This was our last interview that we're going to play in the month of April, so we hope that you enjoyed. We saved the best for last, Dr. Grandin. We
Well,
hope that you guys enjoyed, and we're going to be back with May programming. Make sure that you check out what we have going on. But until then, give your kiddos a hug for me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.